get my 6. It's almost dark. It's pretty creepy up here in the woods right now, and it is October, so very apropos. I did not put off coming up here to make the video today, telling you this story until dark. Intentionally, it happened because the story was unfolding throughout the day. I talked on the phone today for 3 hours with an old friend that I had not had contact with since 2006. Something that I thought at the time, back in 2006, as ironic, happened that now I can look back on and say, probably wasn't irony. There was some serendipity at play. There was some paranormal / supernatural / we don't understand how things in this world work as much as we would like to tell ourselves that we understand how the things in this world work at play. It was 2006, okay? I was going through a divorce. It was not a good time in my life. I had a friend whose name, this is the guy I talked to today for 3 hours, for the first time in 15 years, Bartholomew. But of course he went by Bart. We're the same age, almost to, well, the same year, born in 73. That's not that much of an uncommon name. Once upon a time, it was a common name. Bartholomew is not as common as it was a century ago, or 2 centuries ago, or in the case of this story, 160-ish years ago, right after the Civil War. But the name Zachariah is. That's not as common as it used to be. I believe it's an old biblical name. And there are 2 Zacharias in this story, just as there are 2 Bartholomews. So it's 2006. I'm going through a divorce. I just think, well, gosh, life sucks. And I'm commiserating with my friend Bart. And he says, well, you know, I hear you. And he had just recently gone through a divorce as well. And he said, you know, it could be worse. You know, you could be losing your, family ancestral home of the last 160 years or whatever on top of being divorced like I am. And I'm like, well, I don't have an ancestral home that's 160 years old. But what's going on with you? I asked him. Now, he was living in Charlottesville, as I was at the time, Charlottesville, Virginia. And I knew he was originally from North Carolina, right outside of Wilmington, close to Wilmington. I'm not mentioning last names here because you could Google this and find out who these families are. And I've started withholding last names because I've had people comment in the comment section. They go, OMG, I actually Googled your story to see if it was real, and I actually found out that it was. Well, you people think I make this stuff up? You think I just pull these stories out of thin air and present them, present fiction as fact? I'm holding this sign up because I got numerous messages today on Etsy about where's Bigfoot Sasquatch Files Volume 11? Where is it? It's on Amazon. It's not available on Etsy. You've got to go to Amazon to get Bigfoot Sasquatch Files Volume 11 in print or Kindle, which came out a few days ago. All right. So, Something's going on here. Listen to my story as I tell it, but watch this area back here, okay? So, here's the history of Bart's family. It's a very interesting history, and it's part of this story. The end of which I didn't find out until today, which is truly creepy. I believe you'll agree by the time we get to the end. So, Bart's family had a house, like an old mansion built right around the turn of the 19th century, which, remember, was about the year 1800, because the first century is from the years 0 through 99. So right around 1800, just outside of Wilmington. The family's patriarch, the original patriarch, amassed I'm telling it out of order. There was a sizable property with a very nice mansion built around 1800ish that was not quite yet Bart's family's property or their estate. It belonged to someone else, a man who passed his name down. The first name was Zachariah, okay? He was a peanut farmer back during those times in that part of North Carolina. It's in the Tidewater region. We have a Tidewater region in Virginia. It's known for fishing, agriculture, sweet potatoes, but peanuts is the crop that this family farmed. They did very well for themselves. They at one point amassed like over 1,000 acres worth of land. They just kept buying up land, had the mansion. And Zachariah, the original number one, had a beautiful daughter. She was in her, late 20s, early 30s. And he was a widower. His wife had died actually during birth, giving birth to this beautiful daughter, which was common back then. Unfortunately, it still happens today. If you've followed the channel for a while, you know that my beautiful bride, Dearly, a.k.a. Giggly Girl, her sister Connie died in February the same way over in the Philippines, died during labor. So it does still happen. Well, back in those times, and this was common in Virginia and probably much of what was the U.S. by that time, which was still new, less than 30 years old after the Revolution, it was common for families of means to try to marry into other families of means. You might have to rewind and you might have to turn your volume up to hear that. But I thought I heard a growl, and I just now heard like a howl or a scream. This is creepy. It's almost dark. It's getting dark on me out here in these creepy woods, and I'm not even close to the end of the story. Jeez, all those people are right when they comment, why does it take you 18 minutes and 36 seconds to tell a 3-minute story? I don't know. But do you think it's intentional? I would do it quicker if I could, especially when dark's coming. But these stories have got to be told the right way, brah. So as it turns out, my friend Bart, his family lived in the area at the time, and he had an ancestor that actually tried to court this young girl because he was trying, hey, let's get your estate plus my estate equals a bigger estate, more wealth. And it was known that people did this back then. It made sense. They call them what they call them now, purse diggers or gold diggers. Because now it's kind of looked down upon. It's like you're trying to marry someone or get into a family because of their money. It's kind of tacky. But back then it was common. But the girl didn't like Bart's ancestor, so it just didn't work out. Well, as it turns out, Zachariah, later in years, as he got older, he took to drinking. He started gambling. And Bart's ancestor from way, way back, he thought, well, if I can't get into this family or into this estate through marriage, I'll get this old boy lit up, get him all lit and drunk, and see if I can get him to gamble away his property. It actually worked. It actually worked. Zachariah bet his entire estate, the mansion, the property, the land, bet it away, and he lost. Bart's family took over ownership. Okay? So, they say that this completely drove Zachariah bat crap crazy and insane. He used to, he had to go live in town with the commoners after he lost it all. And he would often go to the property and stand outside the mansion and scream and curse and declare that he would one day have that house back and have that property back, and he was going to haunt it after death. He died, and he did. Potentially. For many generations, people would claim to see Zachariah or his likeness, an apparition of him on the property in the house. But then it just stopped. It stopped, Bart, who's my age, almost 50, his parents, his grandparents, never saw any ghosts, never had any indication of any hauntings. But here's the deal. Here's what happened. And it's very similar. If you've ever read The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner, which is a difficult book to read. I finally read that in, I think, February this year for the first time ever. I know I'm supposed to probably have read that a long time ago, but that's one of two books that I had to continuously Google to find out what was going on because of the way Faulkner wrote and the different styles, point of view at the beginning. That and another book, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, who, interestingly, she wrote it under a pseudonym. She used a man's name in the beginning because this is back in the 1830s, I think, when Wuthering Heights was written. And nobody would just buy a book written by women because, or written by a woman. What do they know? They can't write. Hey, we now know, come on, seriously? Girls can do anything boys can do and usually better. I mean, J.K. Rowling, a few others. I take that back. J.K. Rowling and a lot of others. A lot of great women writers out there. But that was a very difficult book to read too, and I found myself going to Google to try to figure out what in the heck it means, But it was a similar situation, and it is that those who once were the haves, as they become the have-nots, have a hard time dealing with it. So, over the last century and a half or so, nearly 2 centuries since my friend Bart's family took over this property by winning it through a gambling bet, they would have to sell some off. So here, fast forward to 2006, how the story started. I think he still had the house, and he had about 5 acres, and it had gotten down to where it was time for him to sell it. He was the last person in the family to have it. He didn't want it because he was down here in Charlottesville. I thought he was doing well for himself. As it turns out, he wasn't doing as well as I thought. He shared this with me at the time. So he said, I've got to sell this house because I'm broke. I can't keep it up. I can't keep, what he had going on here in Charlottesville going at the time. He owned a business, and it didn't do well. It went out of business. He said, why don't you come down here with me, and let's spend about a week at this place. I was separated at the time, and my ex-wife, she would keep the kids during the week, during that period of the separation. I'd have them on the weekends, and I was like, okay, well, let's go down. I got 5 days. And he told me, I'm not far from the beach. We'll go to the beach. We'll just kind of commiserate together. I said, great. Sounds great. So I got to go down. I got to see the property. I got to see the mansion. And it was beautiful. But in the, I remember you walk in the front door, you go up the stairs, all the way back. It had three stories, 3 floors. Up on the 3rd floor, there was it was a very wide hall with a very high ceiling that went out onto a balcony that overlooked what appeared to be I'm looking in front of me here. I just saw a limb on a tree moving. There's nothing there, no birds, no squirrels, so keep getting my 6. It went out onto a balcony, and you could overlook the marshes. It was kind of a marshy area. But they still had, like, pictures of these old people on the wall. I was like, who are these people? And he was explaining to me, well, great-grandfather, great-great-great, all this stuff. But he got to this one, and it looked kind of sinister. And he says, that's the original Zachariah, the guy who accumulated this wealth, peanut farming, the guy who bet this house and property off in a game and lost. He explained that his family kept that there kind of like to be smart alecks. You know, this is how we got this. But now he's like, you know, I guess he finally had the final laugh. Here we are 200 years later, and now we're losing it. And I just felt, when I looked at that picture, I could feel the hair on my arms standing up. It was just, there was something about this guy that was creepy. Okay, so that was the first day we were there. We drove down. It doesn't take long to get there from Charlottesville, you know. But it's enough of a drive to wear you out. When we got down there, we didn't feel like going to the beach. So we did that the next day. So we do that. We spend midday at the beach. We come home late afternoon. We go in the house. I walk upstairs to go look off of that balcony, okay? Because it just had a beautiful view. I walked past that picture again, and I felt like this cold chill go by me, cold air. Stepped out on the balcony. I'm looking down to see the marshes, and at the edge of the property, there was a man standing there, and this man looked just like Zachariah from that painting, that creepy old man in that painting right inside the door there. And I was looking, and I thought, well, there's no way it could be him, but it's somebody. Maybe it's somebody my friend knows. So I go back in the house, and I say, hey, Bart, were you expecting company? There's somebody out here on the edge of your property. And he goes, where? So we go back out, and he's gone. He's gone. So I figure, well, just some guy walking by. Didn't think much more of it. We did a lot of beaching. We ate a lot of seafood. We actually went fishing once. It was the next to the last day we were there. We were out just walking along the property and up and down the roads that surrounded the property. And we're coming back, and it was raining. It was raining heavily. I remember that. We thought we were going to be able to get home and beat the rain home, but obviously we didn't. There was a small footbridge we had to cross to get over one of the marshy areas. Had a stream coming through. We started jogging to get back to the house in time, and as we're crossing the bridge, I see that same man standing on the other side of the bridge, just standing there in the rain. We get past him about 20 or 30 yards. I'm like, what the heck's that guy just standing there in the rain for? He goes, what guy? I said, you didn't see the guy right there on the end of the bridge? He turns and he looks back. He goes, him? Yeah, that's odd. So I look back and I see the guy. We turn back around. We start jogging. And we both looked back just instinctively, like 10 seconds later, and he's gone. He disappeared just as interestingly as he had several days before when I'd seen him stand at the edge of the property. So we came back, Charlottesville. About a month later, my friend called me and he said, hey, I've got to go back down to my place. I've got a buyer. Will you go with me? And I was like, well, sure, why not? Because it was just like a weekend trip we were going to do. So we go down there, and we're in his house, and because he was selling, this was back 2006, a lot of people wouldn't use real estate agents. This is when commissions were just evil. Everybody started trading their own stocks online. They started, using those things where they sold their houses without, they just thought it was sinful to pay it, whatever. A lot of people lost their butts because of that. So anyway, we're down there. The next day, this buyer shows up. We hear the knock on the door. We open the door. It's a man, I would say old man at the time because he was in his mid to late 50s, but it's not old now. I'm almost 50. And his very beautiful daughter, who was about 30, we were about that age. We were 30-ish at the time. And she was hot. She was gorgeous. But the man, there was something about him that looked familiar. I was like, I feel like I know this guy, like I've met him before. And so we're all four talking, and Bart says, can I show you the house now? And the old man says, take my daughter and start showing her around. I'm going to go around with your friend because I want to be able to talk to my daughter later and kind of compare and contrast our views and what we thought independently without, us having been there to both influence each other, because he explained to us that he was buying a house for his daughter. Terrible story. She had recently been widowed. She had recently been married less than a year. Her husband was in the U.S. Armed Forces, was in Afghanistan, and he got killed over there. He didn't come home. So at 30-ish, this beautiful young woman was already a widow. They never had kids, and she wasn't pregnant. And she just couldn't stand to live in the house she had been living in with her husband. They just bought a new house, so her dad thought she needed a different house. And so that's why they were there, to look at the house. So Bart and this girl, they go upstairs to look around at the house, and the old guy, he stops me. He says, this is going to sound crazy as all get out, but I feel like I've been here before. He said, I would be willing to wager that if we go up these steps, there's going to be 2 bedrooms on the right, there's going to be a bathroom in the center, and there's going to be a library on the left. He went on to explain the house exactly as it was. And I said, well, sir, that is pretty odd. And he says, sir, that's my dad, and he's a jerk. Don't call me that. He said, call me by my first name. I said, well, what is your first name? And he said, Zachariah. I felt the hair on my arm stand up again. It's too dark to read the sign. Go buy Bigfoot Sasquatch Files Volume 11 on Amazon and print or Kindle. So anyway, the long and short of it is, I showed the guy around the house, and when we got up to where those pictures were and he saw that picture, he said he felt like he was looking in a mirror. And when I told him that old man's name, the original owner of that estate, was Zachariah, the hair on his arm stood up as well. Well, they bought the house, and then, of course, I left. I went to the Middle East. I went to Iraq, and then I lived in Southeast Asia for all those years, and I just lost contact with my friend like I did so many friends. Well, I reconnected with that friend today, Bart. Like I said, we talked on the phone for 3 hours. He doesn't live in Charlottesville anymore. He lives outside of Wilmington, North Carolina. He lives in that old mansion that had been in his family for about 160 to 200 years, which had been in another family about 100 years before that. He lives there with his wife, a very beautiful woman that he met when she came to potentially buy his house, and he showed her around. That's the part of the story I never knew until today. Turns out they really hit it off. They dated for a number of years, and now they're married and they have 2 kids, and they still live in that house. And the scariest part, Bart told me that around 2010, when all this genealogy crap became popular and famous and everybody wanted to find out where they came from, they did that. And they found out that his wife was a descendant from the original owner of that estate, the original Zachariah. I hope you're enjoying your October nights. If you like this story and you want to hear more like them, come back tomorrow. See you next time.